Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat Podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. Today, Ashley is speaking with Alexian Wines, who is often referred to as the leader with heart. Ali serves as the Chief Operating Officer at BrooksBowerAsia, BGA, a strategic advisory firm that specializes in the Indo-Pacific, and is also the creator and co-author of Letters to Lily, Lessons in Leadership and Loving Yourself, a self-reflection of leadership lessons. She brings to her work a unique and distinguished background, having also served for 8 years at the White House, holding a range of prestigious positions under President Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. Previously an executive in residence at Oxford University in the UK and a speaker for Oxford's Women Transforming Leadership program. Ali is a founding member of Chief DC, a private network focused on connecting and supporting women executive leaders. Let's get started.
Good morning, Ali.
Good morning.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for saying yes to an in-person podcast and also making the arrangement at Chief Clubhouse here in DC. Super meaningful. I just want to say welcome, Ali.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I went to your book launch here. Not this particular one, but it was at another location.
Yes.
Because I actually came here first.
I remember that.
You remember that? I was
Yes.
like, oh God, I'm going to have to go. So I'm your podcast host today.
Yes.
Ashley Chung for Virtual What I Call a Chat. And we have your, mutual friend, your co-author
Yes.
of Letters to Lily.
Yes.
And we're going to Lessons in Leadership and Loving Yourself launched into our discussion.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. Ali, tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's a great question to start with. I was not even expecting that. I am the Chief Operating Officer at BrooksBowerAsia, International Government Affairs and Public Policy firm focused on Asia. We just actually expanded into Africa last year. So it's a whole new continent. And so it's a whole new layer of education and also a little bit of stress, but it's very interesting. And I've been doing work in the private sector now for roughly 20 years, which has been a minute. And then prior to that, I had the very, very good fortune to work for both President Clinton and President Bush at the White House. And so my journey has been very interesting and definitely far more than I ever imagined for myself. And I guess anything more about me, some random facts. I left the United States for the first time in my life with the President of the United States. I feel most creative, most free on an airplane, which most people find incredibly ironic, just based on, you're sort of at someone else's complete disposal. Boy,
What are you for hobbies?
oh, I love to travel. I love to travel. I hope that can be a hobby. I used to think that if I ever did something else, and this is really sort of embarrassing, I'm like an undercover rapper, which most people do not believe until they actually see it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I'm like old school, right? I cannot hold my own with any of the new stuff, but
Not yet.
not yet.
Not yet.
Well, some of it is just I feel like so much of the new stuff is just really just not my vibe. So I haven't gotten into a lot of the new stuff, but anyway. Oh, and I'm a huge fan of Broadway. So I don't know if that counts as a hobby, but
I'm a huge fan of Broadway too.
I would go to see a Broadway show every day if someone would let me. The Broadway show Hamilton is what inspired me to go back and get my master's degree.
Really?
At 40.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go see Six on May 6th. 6 women.
Oh, fabulous. Oh my gosh, I love that.
If I could actually plan it for June 6th, it'll be June
Yes, that would be
6th,
awesome.
2026.
Yes.
6 women, but
But you haven't seen it yet.
no, I have not
Okay,
seen
okay.
it.
I
yet.
saw it when it was here on the traveling circuit and loved it. Like, I want to see it again.
I heard so many good things about it.
yeah.
Like last month. Was it last month? No, it's still this month. April. How did we get to April? I don't know. I went to see two play
Okay.
the Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And then There's another play off Broadway. It's called Chinese Republicans.
Oh, how
It's
is that?
by a young playwright, Chinese American. I'm actually doing an event on May 6th
Okay.
at the Temple by Hilton at Times Square. And I invited the playwright to come.
Wow.
She said yes.
Wow. Oh, congratulations. I don't think I got my invitation.
I'll send you one.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm actually having a panel discussion. It's about rewriting our narrative, but I have like a couple other people that is from corporate, but they are involved with nonprofit organizations. They're intellectual property space. I've been a patent paralegals, case manager, and then for the last 6 years, I started my own company and doing virtual consultancy for filing. So like right before this, I was doing one filing, and then another one was like, oh, I am my Uber's here, so I need to go. And then I'll come back. This is 1:30 before my second interview. But life has been very interesting. But even though I'm like have a lot of stuff going on, but I feel that I have more autonomy.
Okay.
So I actually really enjoy that,
That's
and on
really
Wednesday, I'm going to go to the Bay Area,
nice.
coming back on Friday.
Wow. I'm jealous of your travel schedule.
Well, I am not, but not for this.
Well, keep in mind my freedom on the plane, so.
Yes. It's a quick trip. I'm going there to a regional meeting with like legal operation
Okay.
on Google campus.
Oh,
At Mountain
that will
View.
be fun. Yeah.
I've actually been there once, and I know some people there. They're super nice. And there's also another group called Adapt About Legal, and which I'm supporting. And there's like different nonprofit that I've actually gotten to be involved with.
Okay.
So I'm actually really enjoying. So let's refocus on you.
Okay.
All right, walk us through your career journey. I know that you have like, now you're like in the private sector. Can you walk us through your career journey from the White House and NSC to the Bauer Group Asia? There's so many differences between the public and the private sector. What lessons from those early roles that still influence how you lead today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I should start by saying never, ever did I think that my story would include saying that I worked for 2 U.S. presidents or that I was in an executive role at this stage in my career, primarily because my lens was very narrow. And I grew up in a very small hometown, one high school, and I didn't really realize how big the world was. I had always, I guess, believed that we become, or we believe that we can be what we can see. And so for me, I saw teachers, nurses, secretaries, doctors, like that was my small hometown. So the White House was certainly not something that ever came into my mirror in any form or fashion.
It's definitely bigger.
Much bigger. Much bigger. I had planned to go to school to become a teacher, and I planned to teach government because I really found American government especially very interesting. So while I was at the University of Virginia, I found that I needed to do an internship in my major. This was way back in the day, right? So I definitely wasn't searching anything on my phone, but I went back to my dorm and I typed in government majors and the White House came up. And so I thought, well, if I want to teach government, what a better firsthand experience than to do an internship at the White House. And so I applied, and I don't know, I figured what was the worst thing that could happen, right? They'll just tell me no.
Yeah, no, it's the only thing that would actually not work. And then you apply again.
Right. I was very fortunate in that I got the internship. And even better, keep in mind, like where I grew up to Washington, D.C. is not even an hour drive. But to me, going to D.C. was sort of like going to a foreign country. And so me going to the White House, that was a very, very big deal. And you can imagine my surprise when I got into the intern program and was sitting in the conference room with like 250 of my closest friends, only to realize that I didn't have an assignment. And as I was looking to my left and my right, and I saw everybody with their folders, I just had one that had my name on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought for sure something was wrong. Anyway, turns out I was among 5 people who had been chosen to interview for positions within the White House. And that was pretty crazy because I was sure somebody had made a mistake, right? I did not take a traditional path to going to college. I ended up working for a few years first, and it never dawned on me that that experience was valuable, even if it had nothing to do with government work. I ended up being selected for one of the roles that I'd interviewed for, and then from that worked my way into a political position. So I became a political appointee under President Clinton, worked in the White House counsel's office at a very stressful time in politics, especially during the Clinton impeachment, and then had the opportunity to move over into a civil servant role with the National Security Council. And so I worked for the NSC in the lead up to and the aftermath of 9/11, which was also very stressful, obviously, for our nation. So I really feel like I had this very unique experience that I never envisioned as part of my journey. But interestingly enough, as I started to have more opportunities to be active in the world, right, my lens expanded. And all of a sudden, I started to realize that the world was so much bigger than I ever conceptualized. And then I started traveling with President Bush and the National Security Council. It was like the whole world just opened up. Even though I still had so much respect for teachers and everything that they do every single day, all of a sudden I had desires that were outside of my small hometown. And they included seeing the world and meeting people all over the world and really having, hopefully, an impact in whatever came my way. And so that was sort of the start of it all. But I can tell you that, you know, in politics especially, it can be ruthless, right? I mean, we're
Ruthless too.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at politics today and I didn't realize that it could be so much more harsh or difficult than what it was back then. And yet it is. I look at, I guess,
I think people lost stability.
that's what I was going to say. I never thought in my lifetime we would be as divided as we are today. And that is really heartbreaking for me because it doesn't have to be this way. All that to say that even in different administrations, it doesn't matter whether you're in the government, if you're working for a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, in the private sector, we all, regardless of where we work, we've all probably had really great bosses, I hope, and we've also had really awful bosses. And so one of the biggest lessons for me at a very early age was, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to think about you? Because if you were to ask me right now, tell me something great about your most favorite boss, Amy, I can tell you great things. I can also tell you the ones that I thought, oh my gosh, how did you ever get into this role? And so for me, that was the biggest lesson. And, you know, speaking of random facts, I carry quotes in my purse that are things that sometimes I just may need to remember when I'm having a bad day or whatever the case may be. And Maya Angelou's, people may not remember what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. I think that that's a lesson that I learned early that I try to keep with me all the time, right? Like, we all have bad days, and how we respond in the moment of having a bad day can either lift someone or it can hurt someone. And that's a lot of responsibility, no matter what you do in your life, right? Like, you have power with your words. So I'd say that's probably like one of my early moments is that, you know, the White House can be really, really, really stressful. But how do you lead people? Do you lead them in a way that they want to follow you? Or are you leading them just because they know that the hierarchy is what it is? And that's probably early on one of my bigger lessons. Then when I moved into the private sector, that was a whole new education, right? Because I had focused on government. I thought I had planned to teach. But then I realized that there's a lot of benefit that comes from government organizations and that relationship that they have with private sectors. And so I started for a very small, what was at one point a very small company, has grown a lot. Like I said, it was a whole new education. All of a sudden I went from, I guess I can share this, it's sort of comical, but you know, I would call somebody and I'd say I'm calling from the White House or calling for the National Security Council. People called you back like really quickly.
Yeah.
And I went to work for,
Mess with you.
that was a very small company at the time where I would call and someone would say, you work where and you want who and what's your number? And then 5 days later, I'd still call them back because it didn't have the same like weight of the White House.
No.
So
It's a big house.
Yes, exactly. And so what I had to learn then was like, you go from this massive mammoth of an organization that people call you back to building. That's a whole different ball game. There aren't IT people that just hey, my computer's not working. No, you're like trying to find who is the IT guy? Where did he
What I really miss the most is I email somebody and then they will like come in as a help. Can you
Yes, yes. Yes. And so I missed that too at first. And I thought, oh my goodness, like this is hard. Like this is really hard. And I even thought about going back into the government because I thought I need that structure. I need that, like, this is the way we do it. This is, right. Yes. I could be your backup right there.
Because you get wrapped.
I could.
It's just
Yeah. So then I got into a different space of leadership because when I was thinking about going back into the more structured place that I felt comfortable, I realized I was working for a really great human being. And I thought, I don't know that I want to leave this leader, right? And so I remember somebody told me one time, like, sometimes you just need to put your big girl pants on and keep going. And I thought, all right, the things that I'm uncertain about in this space of growth, it is just uncertainty, right? It's change.
It's just your own narrative. You just have to rewrite it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I thought, is it the end of the world that I can't pick up the phone and the IT guy picks up, calls me back? Like, no, it wasn't. It was just outside of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that was a big lesson in building business, right? It's like every day is going to be outside of your comfort zone. And that's okay, right? With that comes growth. And so that really, again, expanded my lens. I started traveling more as we were opening and establishing more offices throughout Asia, and I was meeting incredible people. The thing that I found most interesting is that while we may have different cultural norms in business, we sort of are still so much alike, right? We kind of all want to have a lot of the same things, right? We want to be healthy. We want to have gainful employment. We want to be paid an equal wage from the other people that we work with.
Respected.
We want to be respected, right? And we want to have opportunities. We want our children to have opportunities. And, it's so easy to sit in one place of the world. And if you never go anywhere, you never realize that, you see what you hear on the news. That may only be really good things about a country, or it may really only be bad things about a country. But the reality is that every single country, ours included, has really good things and some not so good things. So this was, again, eye-opening for me because I was like, these people that I'm working with, they're amazing. We sort of still all want the same things in life. I think there's a great lesson in, I hate to say bias because I don't look at it like that, but I think it's so easy to see how we're influenced by what we hear, that we actually do need to take some extra steps. And I think now with AI especially, right? Like,
you don't keep hallucinating.
Right. You don't know. And so I felt this sense of greater community than I had ever experienced. And so one of the lessons there was a great reminder to me that we have a job, we have a title, we have a description, but that is the tip of the iceberg. And who we really are is so much deeper and so much broader underneath the water, underneath the surface. And that's like the special part of everybody. So really understanding and knowing your people became a top priority for me in the lessons space. And I have continued to try to make sure that I understand, regardless of where you sit in our company, because the majority of people do not sit in Washington, D.C. I want to know who you are. I want to know about your dreams, your goals. How many children do you have? And then I also have to be reminded that with HR, there are limitations to everything that I want to know. I need to know. But yeah, so that's a great question. The lessons bit is hard because I feel like I've learned so many lessons, and I feel like I'm still learning lessons every single day.
Every day is a lesson.
Every single day.
There's a lesson.
Every day.
You have visited many, many countries across the globe.
Yeah.
I've worked extensively across like Asia.
Mm-hmm.
What cultural insight have most shaped your approach to partnership building and client?
So I think what's really interesting is, again, when I think about U.S. norms and culture, if I go into Asia and I don't know, let's say I'm in Japan, a lot of the things that I think are normal business are not normal business in Japan, right? Even how we present our business card, where we sit in a room in the U.S., Like I was always taught, you stare someone, you look at them in the eye and you are respectful because you're looking them in the eye. But in certain Asian cultures, right, that the longer you stare may not necessarily
become offensive.
Right, exactly. So I think that that can be for so many companies that want to say they're a global business or international. If you want to continue to remain in business, it's really important that you take the time to understand what some of those cultural sensitivities are. I mean, business is business. I always hear that, but I also have had people say to me, Allie, it's business, it's not personal. And I actually find that so offensive because
Lawyers that tells me all the time.
Well, you know, my response to that is I spend the majority of my waking hours working. There's probably nothing that's more personal than to devote so much of your life to something, an organization, a purpose, or whatever. So it is personal. And I think that the more personal we realize working is, the more productive our teams will be. That's my opinion. Obviously, for all the people that say, is business not personal, they're not going to be in my camp, but
it's okay. You don't have to be everybody's cup of tea.
That's right.
Or water.
There we go. But I do believe that at the end of the day, no matter whether you are sitting in the US, Asia, Africa, wherever you are in the world, if you're doing any sort of business, any sort of interaction, you want to be treated fairly and you want to build relationships. And those relationships will be what continues to create opportunity. And that's sort of what we're all looking for, right? Expanding opportunity, being good to each other, doing good for the communities we work in.
Do you want to know why I asked about the cultural question?
And please tell me.
I used to be a poli-sci and East Asian languages and cultures major at the University of Kansas.
Okay.
So I was always like poli-sci. For some reason, I came to the state when I was like 12, 13 or something like that. And then my very first class, I believe it was an algebra class. At fourth church high, I think fourth church high. My family moved a lot early on, immigrant. My parents eventually, moved us all the way to Lawrence, Kansas. That's why University of Kansas. They opened a Chinese restaurant, so we work for them and then go to school and different things. But I remember my very first class in algebra. I was like in sort of like a sophomore, and the first class I was in, this particular kid was using a folded of paper plane and just threw it right at me. And I was like, oh boy, I didn't have enough confidence. I didn't know what to say. I cannot say, hey, what did you do? I cannot do that. I did not really quite defend myself. So I think that narrative was so bad in building up. I just learn to adapt. I learned to accept and tolerate. And then we moved to Lawrence, Kansas. We had some discrimination. A family member was basically assaulted. We had to go through their legal systems, go through healthcare and insurance, and it was a pretty bad time. So we also did not have a really good sort of image of how the U.S. is working, in terms of like we were being sort of targeted. The only way that I knew how, because I was like, I don't want to be working at a restaurant, even for my parents, for the rest of my life. So how do I get myself out of this system? For some reason, I really like political science. And so I did really well. Even without like English as a first language, I did really well in poli-sci and U.S. government in high school and in college. But it's the hard sciences that are actually getting me into trouble because I don't understand. And I don't necessarily have that background. And so one of my professors actually taught like East Asian languages and culture. He was like, well, you're from Hong Kong and you speak the language and you should actually do this. And eventually maybe you could go to work for State Department. So that was my route. At least that's what I thought. Yeah. So I did that. So I double major in East Asian languages and culture and poli-sci. And my master thesis was on U.S. and Chinese negotiating style. That stimulation. Actually, within the two departments, there's also international business law professor. He graduated from Harvard, but he didn't want to practice in private law because he doesn't believe in that. But he wants to be in education, but he didn't want to go teach at law school. So he taught at business school and kind of collaborate with like East Asian languages and cultures department. And he also does like Latin Americas and all kinds of things. But this particular professor was so cool. He's American, German descendant, but he, like when I was in my thesis, Because my parents, they don't come from money. He was like, one time he knew that I was going into a master program. He asked me to come to see him at the office for office hours. I'm like, okay. And so I went to see him. He was like, I'm going to be going to Saratoga Springs and teach for the next year. Would you like to house at my place? I was like, no. I'm like Chinese woman, and what would that look like in a small town? And he was like, well, don't say no so fast, and you should go and talk to your parents about it, because he also know my parents. Besides working at a restaurant, I was like, oh, my resume need to be like improved a little bit, and I need to add some skills. So add some networking. So I applied to work for the Center for East Asian Studies. So I'm surrounded by all these professors, international study, all of this in the Lipinka Hall. And this professor has been so good. And eventually it's like, sure, what could I do to repay you? He was like, you can do some research for me. I'm like, but not depending on that. Just pay for your utilities and nothing else. He goes like, that's my scholarship to you.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
huh?
I like it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he passed probably about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. That was the thing that he actually taught me, quotes, nothing venture, nothing gain.
Yeah.
I think prior to him, Chinese American woman, and having that previous experience of people just basically being kind of not so great to you, I would not have been a nothing venture, nothing gain person, because I don't know that I would have anyone in my vicinity that would teach me that.
Yes.
So I was thinking that is really important. Can we talk a little bit about, you do a lot of things with youth, letters to Lily.
Yes.
That's a very impressive story, because I don't know that he would actually go offer that to a lot of people. Have you ever had any instances where you actually see someone with potential, but they didn't quite believe in themselves yet? Actually, quite a bit of the people actually did fall into that category. So how do you actually help cultivate their belief in themselves?
Yes. So I can speak so easily to that because I was one of those people that didn't believe in themselves. So I guess I'll just rewind a minute and say that very small town that I grew up in, you believe that you can be what you can see. So it was very limited. I was in the 8th grade and I had a teacher who looked at me in front of the entire class and asked me, does being stupid come naturally to you? Or do you have to work at it? And so for somebody who already had some real, self-worth issues, maybe my parents divorced when I was very young. So growing up was not the easiest time ever. And so where you think school should help and expand and guide and teach, in the 8th grade, I just felt stupid. The damage that teacher's words did to me was so awful and took so much to get through that even as an adult, there are still days that her words haunt me.
Oh, is that her?
Yes, it was a her. Oh. Yeah. So anyway, what that did is it sort of set me back, right? Whereas you should be in school learning, I sort of felt like I had to perform in school because I assumed that if one teacher thought I was stupid, all of them probably thought that. And so you sort of then develop this role playing of trying to answer only the questions that you know are right. The last thing you want to do is answer a question and be wrong. That limits kind of everything. You're afraid to fail. You already feel stupid. I fell in love. That's really when I fell in love with the theater and movies, because I then had the ability to escape into someone else's perfect world for 90 minutes or 120 minutes. And I fell in love with a movie with John Cusack called Say Anything. It's not an award winner, but
with the big
Syrian mom. Yes. That's the one. And I thought that his love interest was so beautiful and articulate and smart. And if only I could be her, the rest of my life would be wonderful. So I decided I would sign up for speech and debate, because maybe if I could learn to speak better, teachers wouldn't think that I was stupid. Again, notice I said teachers, plural, even though no one else had ever said that to me, I assume. I guess I had a moment of courage. But by the time I actually got into the speech and debate class and looked around and saw juniors, sophomores, and seniors, I was like, oh my gosh, no way can I stay in this class. And even worse, the teacher passed out the syllabus. It said, you will deliver your first speech in 3 days. And I can tell you that I said, oh, no way, I'm out of here. And so again, that moment of courage faded very quickly. And I went to my guidance counselor and I told him that I couldn't speak in front of those other students. So I needed another class. And I guess in my mind, he believed that because he didn't try to stop me. And instead he gave me a withdrawal slip to take typing. So I guess he figured if I couldn't speak, I could always type. And now at this stage in my life, I have plenty of words for him too. But I went back to the teacher and I gave her my withdrawal slip. And she said, "What is this?" I said, "It's my withdrawal slip." She said, "I can read that, but why?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to take typing." She said, "I can read that, but why?" And I said, "I can't speak in front of these people." And she looked at me and she said, "These people are your peers." And I can tell you, I just had tears rolling down my face. And I said, "I can't do it." And so she looked at me for probably what was the equivalent of 10 seconds. It felt like 10 minutes. And then she pushed the withdrawal slip back across the table to me. And she said, "And I won't do it. I will not do this because I believe that you can do it." And in that moment, that woman changed my entire life with just her words. It's like she believed in me and knew nothing about me.
She saw the potential in.
Maybe. Maybe she saw the potential in every student. I don't know.
Because I often wonder what my professor then saw in me. Because he goes like, if you don't want to do this, there's plenty of people standing in line for a free apartment. I mean, it's a townhouse. It's a 2-level townhouse.
Right.
And I didn't have to pay for anything. He also flew in on his own dime to hear my defense. He was the second chair at that point.
Wow.
And so he really had been very good and in terms of like cultivating. And also the thing that was really, really important, I think that teacher is so important, but I don't know that we have enough of those type of teachers right now based on like pay, and also everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So the next generation is a little bit concerning in terms of how they're going to be doing it. But like, because I asked him, I was like, there's finding people that you could actually give it to. Why are you giving it to me? Because I believe that you need to have some separation from your family to do your thesis. You need the peace.
Yeah.
And he was 100% right.
Yeah.
So I have really interesting professor on my committee. The defense itself, it was like, I think 90 minutes, which is, it feels like 2 years, or maybe even longer. So my actual thesis chair used to work for Foreign Broadcast Information Services, VIS.
Okay.
So he was a Princeton graduate, historian major, and used to work for FBIS, which is a branch of CIA. He is so tough on me. And I used to argue with him. And I don't argue much at that time. And I once told him, because he really upset me, I like to enroll in classes that are more difficult. I like challenges. And I think I just really like challenges. Whether I accomplish it or not, I just want to do it.
Okay.
So in this particular class, he had talked about cultural differences. It was like a graduate level class. Participation count for 70%. So you have to speak.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And then the other part is basically your final exam, your midterm, and things like that. Now, that particular class has mostly Americans, a few Asians, like Taiwan, me, and then I am a U.S. citizen. But, there's like people, I don't feel obligated to speak if I don't have something to say. Yeah. But if you make 70% of your class,
you better come up with something.
Yeah, but I am so double too. My dad used to call that principal. I'm like, I went and sort of debate with my professor before I even got the grade. And I told him, I said that because I feel like that I'm fighting for my fellow, classmates.
Yes.
A couple of women, and then I hear the people that talk about this, but 70%, it's not the quality stuff. People just speaking so that they can get the thing. So my thing was like, I have the professor that is super, super supportive of me, and the guy who's also, I think he saw a lot of potential in me, so he's like pushing me. So I went to him. I made an office hour visit. I have something that I need to share. And he's also a China area specialist. I have something to share. And he was like, okay, I think that your syllabus and your class is designed with systematic biases.
Wow, good for you.
And he was like, why would you say that? I said, look at all the quality of the people that are talking about things. Because 70%, it's going to be very subjective based on what you think is good. How do we see the metrics of qualitative versus quantitative on what people said? Because I hear people just talking to get your 70%. But what about for some of us who are not comfortable, first of all, English not being our first language.
Yeah.
And then also with all the other people who are comfortable and speak up. I think that is unfair. And he goes like, well, don't you think that it's unfair for me when I go to Asia? I have to do just as much. I said, no. He was like, why would you say that? I said, because you're an American. Automatically, people in other countries will put you at a different level of respect when you're speaking. I know that you could speak great Chinese, but you are not going to be measured in the same way. You speak maybe a couple of things, and I was like, oh, wow, this is so amazing. He goes like, I disagree. I said, you can disagree, but this is how I feel, and I just want to share. And I might end up failing this class. I will do whatever it is, but I stand with Fushi. Decision that I will only say when I have something important to say. And I refuse to be like buying into your system. And I haven't even gotten that grade at that point. And he was like, oh, he's my thesis advisor. And my thesis was like written up and in all like red ink and all these things. And the other professor who's flying in from New York, I just feel like with all those red marks in my head, I might be flunking my thesis. I mean, right? So again, I made another, he was like, well, he was like, what do you want? Again. And I said that I have a feeling that you're going to fail me for my thesis because of the mark that you have. That's fine. I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting my other professor's money to come in to see me fail. He was like, well, why would you think that? He said, she didn't give me a whole lot of confidence based on what you mucked up. And, it would be one thing. So I think that the balance between the two, it was really interesting. What is really interesting after that was that I don't know what came over me, but I would basically keep challenging him. And the other person, very supportive, is like, nothing better, nothing gain.
Yeah.
And then, so he was like, I'm not failing you. You have a really good thesis. I'm like, well, I would not have known that if I had not spoken up.
Right.
But I hate to have someone to come and see me fail.
Yeah.
So when I was his name that came in and flew in, and he knew that I was going to be working at the restaurant. So he called me the night before. He was like, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm working in the restaurant. He was like, I knew. You need to go home and study your literature. Well, okay, fine. I mean, I knew my literature, but it's the nurse.
Yeah.
You just have to calm the nerve down. So the next morning, I had to go, and so I was at the building, and I'm an early riser. You are an early riser too. So I went to the building, and I sat down outside of the classroom where I was going to be defending like an hour before. So I'm sitting there with my head and with my Walkman and everything. My professor, the one that flew in, came because he knew that I was going to be there early. So he was like, come on in, let's do your literature review. So we did. And then after that, I did the defense, and there was like 3 people actually, because I had a poli-sci professor who's also a jury consultant. And he told me that I don't think I can go because I have a class. I have a case or something like that. I said, well, you are going to call my department chair and let them know that this is you, not me. You have a chance to review the stuff and let them know you just need to submit your comments. I'm not pleased that you are not here for me for my thesis because I really like that. So I don't know what came over me or doing cry out.
It sounds like you did pretty well. So
in my narrative, I always think that I'm inarticulate.
yeah, I know that feeling.
I don't know, I don't think that I'm stupid.
Right.
And nobody has actually ever told me that I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Because English is not my first language. I often think that I'm inarticulate. And suddenly my attorney would come back and say, what, you are inarticulate? So what was really interesting is that we finished the thesis defense. So I got a communications major professor. I got the international business law Clyde, and then the historian. All 3 of them. And then I answered the questions and I had to study a lot about Roger Fisher and William Urey, like getting to yes, getting past no, negotiation stuff. And so I did really well in my literature review defense because I was comfortable. And I already prepped me for like the first 5 minutes. Once I get into it, I already know.
Yeah.
After that, they send me out to basically, they have to deliberate. And then when I was like, literally crying when I was outside because it's like, oh my God, this is like your academic career is rising at that point. I went out, I was sitting there, I think maybe about 10 minutes, and then they called me back again. And this was a really interesting twist. feel like I'm telling a story here. When I went in there, the thesis chair said that we deliberated. You did really well. There's one change. I said, what's the change? Clyde is going to be the chair, and I'm going to step down as a second chair because I believe that he had done more good for you than I did.
Wow.
That's a pretty powerful story.
It's pretty powerful.
What do you think about that?
Wow, that is powerful.
They both have integrity.
Yeah.
I think it's just very different styles. Terry always think that, I think he's always like so hard, but I think that he's pushing me to challenge him.
Yeah.
Versus the other one is like, oh, whatever you want to do. And not in that sense.
Right.
It's just like letting you know that questioning is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the two of them were like perfect with each other.
I also think, though, there's a lot of credit to be given to recognizing that maybe you're not the best person for a certain situation, right? I mean, there's a leadership component in that too, where the ego has to be put aside to say, you know, even though you were the student, not an employee, but to recognize that this student is gaining more from this person than that one. And
oh yeah, totally.
so
you
being
have to
able
put
to
your
say,
ego away.
right, and that can be hard, especially if you're supposed to be leading something, right? To be like, whoa, wait a minute, I might not be the best person to take this other individual where they will thrive and flourish. I'm always impressed by you, but I'm also equally impressed by the man that said,
Both of men.
I'm not the right person to be chairing this. And I think good for him. Like that in itself is a huge leadership.
Yeah, I think that it's also the dynamics, because team dynamic,
Yeah.
I feel like that if the other person is not as easygoing, it's more power struggle, I don't know that it would have happened.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
But all that to say, to bring it back really quickly to the power of that teacher, you know, one teacher did so much damage with, again, just her words. And another teacher completely changed my life with her words. So a lot of the work that I do with students now is literally sharing exactly my story, which is I didn't grow up in some privileged household where everybody assumed that I would be the next, you know, whoever. And yet I've had this journey and this story that people can relate to that deals a lot with fear and insecurity and not feeling like you're ever enough. And then when they get to see the progression of my career, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. If you went through that and you got to do this, maybe I can too. And I will tell you that one of the most impactful moments in my career, and maybe the one that I'm most proud of, was not at the White House. It was not as the COO of this company. It literally came after I spoke to students for roughly 90 minutes. And I had this young white male who I had no idea what he was coming up to me to say, but he said, "Thank you for making me believe I could be something I never thought I could." That to me means so much because it was just my words and it was 90 minutes of my life. And somebody believed that they could be something else that they never envisioned for themselves. That to me is the biggest testament to the power that we hold every day in every experience, every exchange that we have with anyone. And I hope that people realize just how much potential to raise or potential to harm we have with our words. And so that is like one of the proudest moments for me.
Perfect. We talked about your letters to Lily Movement.
Yes.
So we both know Melissa Cohen.
Yes. Yes.
She's
and
awesome.
love.
Yeah, she's really a gem.
Yes.
A good witch.
Of
LinkedIn.
Yes.
Now that we have from your book launch in DC, I've learned a little bit about like some of the health issues that kind of like woke you up and made you become even more committed to leadership. And then you approach Melissa, who authored this. In your particular sort of stature, you know, founding chief member of the DC, you could have a lot of choices. Melissa and I, when we talk about alignment in values and different things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that you could ask for. Why Melissa?
Oh, how much time do we have?
We have to do filing later,
Yes,
but you know.
Well, first of all, I will say that I have not known Melissa for years and years and years and years, even though I feel like I've known Melissa for years and years and years and years. We actually met, roughly, I don't know, I want to say 13, 14 months ago. So we have done a lot in 14 months, to be very honest. But I met her at a women's retreat, and I just felt like,
Was it Randy's?
no, it was Lee
Okay.
Burgess. And
Yes,
yes.
on her podcast.
Yes. The
Were
Bull
you
Lounge.
so too?
No.
Okay, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. But we met at a retreat, and I just felt like she was so easy to talk to. And I didn't know much about her other than, I mean, I think that we had been connected through Chief on LinkedIn, but we never knew each other. And so then this was like the first time that I ever met her, and I didn't even really know what she did, right? So as we're sitting there at this women's retreat, and I was learning more about her, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to you, because I wasn't very active, to be honest with you, on LinkedIn. It was like, felt like one more thing in the scheme of life and work that I just was like, oh, I cannot do this right now. I said to her, like, we should connect, because I feel like I might need you to like help me think anyway about my presence and how I show up on LinkedIn. So anyway, we started talking, and then I started thinking, like, I've been through everything with a health scare in 2023, and then I met her in 2025. One of the things that happened to me between 2023 and 2025 is that I really wanted to share important lessons that I felt like had impacted my career, things that I wish somebody had talked to me about. You know, I feel like so often, even in my own leadership journey, I had to unlearn bad behavior as a woman, right? When I started seeing women, when I first started entering the job market a minute ago, I was about to throw out the years, but why date myself? There weren't that many women at the table. You know, there was like typically one woman at the table, like the token woman. She had worked really hard to get there, and she definitely wasn't interested in losing her place at the table. When I started, there weren't women saying, pull up a seat. There weren't women who were saying, how can I help you? It was, I'll take you so far, but then that's it, right? I realized in my own journey that I wish people talked more about how to build your career, how to be supportive of each other, like that there is room at the table, right? And if there's not, let's get a bigger table.
How do you spread your arms across the table?
Right, exactly. And so in 2023, I started having strokes, and the harder one of the two, I lost my speech. And the one thing that I love so much is speaking to students and having moments like that young man who said, thank you for making me believe I could be something I never thought I could. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if I never gain the self-confidence again, because it took me a while to get my words back and to be able to, you know, I would get to certain words that I've known forever, and then I would not be able to say them, and I have to relearn them. And I just thought, well, I'd be self-confident enough to get back in front of a room full of students. And so I started thinking maybe an avenue for me is to share some of my lessons through LinkedIn, because they are about leadership. They are about things that I wish people were talking about. And so I asked Melissa, I said, what do you think about if I did like a weekly post called Letters to Lily, where I'm literally writing to my younger self, and it would be sharing lessons in leadership and loving myself? Because I feel like in the end, right, those are the things that we need to learn, and B, because we've already gone through it, we can literally help someone else avoid so many of the mistakes that we've made. And so when I approached Melissa, I said, what do you think about me doing this just as on a weekly basis, just to kind of give me a space in LinkedIn? Because of course, like I said, I very rarely ever posted, and also to have some meaning in what was being put up there. And she said, I love this idea. I think it can turn into a movement. And that was before we ever started talking about a book. She was that supportive of it. So then I started just asking her, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And she would give me her opinion, and oftentimes give me ideas that were even like help me better focus, or
She asks very pointed questions. I love it.
yes.
I mean, sometimes it's like, I don't know.
Yes. And so anyway, I just started posting, and then I started to get engagement. And so I continued to like bounce things off of her. Like, what do you think about your Letters to Lily? And, you know, I think this is a movement. I mean, she had the movement in mind before my brain could ever conceptualize it. I honestly felt like she was one of the biggest advocates for Lily. And I think, you know, Lily literally stands for Lessons of Leadership and Loving Yourself.
L-I-L-L-Y.
Yes, exactly. And so she told me that she was coming to DC, and I said,
Oh, that was actually a workshop?
Yes. And I said, will you meet me for lunch? And she said, yes. And we met, and I said, so just hear me out. Would you consider working with me on a book, Letters to Lily? I said, I think that based on the reception from people who were already sharing their letters and allowing me to put them up on LinkedIn, imagine what we could do with a book where people from again, everywhere in the world had the chance to share a piece of their own journey, their own leadership, their own loving themselves. I feel like it really offered an opportunity to connect the world. And she didn't even take a breath. She was like, yes. So now here we are. We did some amazing work. We had that conversation in September to share with you the people who believed in this book. We were published by December the 9th. We met at the end of September. People believed in this and shared their lessons very quickly. And I am forever grateful for everybody that said, I have a lesson worth sharing. And sitting all around the world, right? This is not a U.S. book. This is a U.S.,
It's global.
Asia, Europe,
UK, Singapore, Lisbon, Portugal, Africa. And then I had mine.
I know.
I was like, do I have the time? Yes, I'll make the time.
I love it.
So yes, I think that it is so important to have someone believe, help us believe in ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it is so important to interview you, not behind Zoom, because we live close by. So that's why I wanted to kind of have you talk a little bit about Letters to Lily. And when I learned about where Lily comes from, and you talk about that at your book launch, I was like, whoa, how clever.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are going to close with the podcast title. I kind of got a little bit out of order. People often refer to you as a leader with a heart. What does that mentality mean to you? And how does it show up in your day-to-day practice of leadership?
I believe at the core of everything we do, no matter what the industry is, it's people, right? I mean, people are the most important part of every organization. And I feel like gone are the days where you're just a number, right? Nobody wants to work for just a number. And to me, if our people are happy, if we're doing right by our people, and by that I mean we're taking good care of them, we're offering them good benefits, we are making sure that their family has good benefits. When people feel valued, it allows them to do their best work. I believe strongly that heart needs to be at the core of every company. I feel very fortunate that I've been with a company that supports that outlook. So for me, it's literally putting people first. It's believing in their growth. It's helping them to progress in their professional career. And hopefully it means that they'll stay with us for a little while, right? I think I had to laugh. I guess it was like a webinar or something a few years ago. And I had a young woman who said to me, I've been with the company for 6 months now. Like, I'm really bored. Do you think it's too soon for me to change roles? And I said, you probably don't want me to answer that because I don't believe that I'm right, but I also don't believe that you're right. So I grew up being told you find a company, you stay with them your entire life, and then you retire and you go about your whatever you want to do in retirement. And now I started looking, I don't know, some years ago at resumes that literally people were working 6 to 8 months and then there was another job on the resume. And I didn't grow up like that. Right. And at first, honestly, I wouldn't even look at those resumes. When I saw that, like 6 months, 8 months, 6 months, I wouldn't even look at them because what I told this young woman is we spend a lot of time and energy trying to find the right person to fill a role, not just somebody who can fill the role, but the right person. And so if we're going to invest in you and spend the time to find you and try to offer you the best opportunities, we don't just want that for 6 months. Like we want at least a year. And for me, I want at least 2 years, right? I feel like if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do right, then I certainly hope that everybody would be willing to stay for 2 years. 1, to really understand the role, and then 2, to kind of thrive in it. I said, but more importantly, I hope that we are offering opportunities for professional growth somewhere between year 1 and year 2 so that you're moving up and not out. So what I'm most interested in is, are you really bored, or have you even really learned the job after 6 months? And if you have, it's worth a conversation with your manager or with HR to say, hey, I really want to do something different. I'm not this isn't maybe where I think I sit the most. Could we talk about some other roles? And I said, but don't be surprised. They may still want you to fill the one you're in for a year before they really invest in your next thing. So anyway, I guess that's a very, very, very long way of saying, for me, I feel like every organization needs heart. It is not just about the bottom line. It is about people first. And when you have the people factor right, the bottom line will get where it needs to be because people will be they will be inspired. They will want to do their jobs well. They will see that they are being invested in. And all of that contributes to the greater good and ultimately the greater bottom line, in my opinion.
Yeah, sometimes, especially right now, I'm quite sad actually by companies that are like pre-announced layoff and having like basically AI to replace human, and I don't know what else I can really say about that. I think one thing that I do want to say about, the 6 to 8 months job hopping, whereas in the old days, it was not acceptable and people don't look at it.
Right.
But I think there's also something to be said about that. Let's talk about Gen Zers. They're very bold. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them are very bold. And like, it took me like 19 years to realize that I want to do something different.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like, my clock need to be kind of like basically the timing. I need to give maybe less tolerance.
Yeah.
And trusting myself more.
Yeah.
And maybe not 6 to 8 months, maybe a couple years.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about like how much they believe in themselves, hopefully. Maybe a little bit of balance if there's good conversation, and hopefully Let Us to Lily will actually help the different generations like bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And I actually have been very interested in working on multi-generational workforce theme. And it kind of, I wrote my own book, 3 books, Building a Leadership Habitat, Collaborating in Competitive Ecosystems, The Leadership Catalyst, which we also have a copy of it.
Yeah.
All those are self-published books. And I'm working on a workbook right now. So we're going to do a workshop. And at first it was going to be like in person, but I was like, I don't know that I have actually in-person time to do that because I'm traveling,
Yeah.
So I changed the idea to be a virtual workshop. And it has 6 different themes. It's like on scarcity, toxicity, people pleasing, boundary setting, very important, self-stewardship, things like that. I just like sent an email to a couple of people, like 6 people, and I was like, would you like to be a facilitator for this? Because I'm going to do this hopefully in June. And I'm working on the workshop in between, figure out exactly how this is. Like within half a day, everybody said yes.
Wow.
And now have to do that. I mean, if it's Zoom, then it's easier again.
Right.
I could collect some data points and figure out exactly how to do it in person. I have that. I will definitely invite you.
Please.
So it's been really interesting to have those things. We have been having quite a time, like talking about everything from college time.
So much, yeah.
Yes. And then so thank you so much. Where would you like Let Us to Lily go next?
I guess I can say this out loud. We are already starting to work on volume 2. We have had people who have continued to write in, and that warms my heart in ways I cannot tell you. I think first and foremost, Melissa and I both believe that it doesn't matter where you sit in this world, right? It's someone somewhere has gone through the same thing. And there is power in knowing you are not alone. And so if this book continues to remind others that they are not alone, I will always be happy about that. But I do believe that, as Melissa said, this is a movement. I believe that so many people have said, oh my gosh, I read your letter, I read my letter, whatever the case may be. And I realized like I gained something from learning that someone else had this experience, or wow, look at that experience. It's like mine, but different. And so Melissa and I want to do more with that. We're hearing what people are saying, right? That it matters. I will say that the Lily movement is alive, and we are going to be building on that, and there will be more information coming forward. But we want to have more opportunity for people to share their stories, facilitate even what we did here at the Chief Clubhouse and other places where you can come in, you can share your story, we can talk about it with the reminder that you're not alone, building that community of people who are supporting each other for leadership and loving themselves, because it's sort of that simple, right? It's like when you understand that someone else has gone through it and is willing to talk about it, there's a power. It sets you free.
You made it okay.
Yeah, it sets you free. Yeah,
Yes.
It's all of a sudden like you don't have to carry the shame of X. And I say shame because there have been moments in my life that I have carried shame that should have never been mine to carry anyway. But I took it on, I believed it, I held it in, and then all of a
You
sudden,
took ownership of all of that.
all of that didn't need to be mine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when I realized I wasn't alone, the whole world just changed because I didn't have to hide it anymore. Like someone else had been there.
So thank you so much again. And thank you for having this wonderful space at the Cheap Clubhouse in DC. Thank you for helping being a DC founding member. And also, thank you for everything you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, and same to you. And thank you for your wonderful letter. Oh, if anyone hasn't read it yet, they should read it.
They would be on page 32.
There we go.
If anyone wants to find out anything about you and Lily, they could connect you on LinkedIn.
I would say probably LinkedIn is easiest.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ali.
Thank you.